Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing on this lovely, if you're on the East Coast, quite rainy Monday morning? Thank you so much for joining another episode of Ascend Live. I am very excited today because we have an amazing guest, and we have cats making noises, and it's just all happening. So before we bring Alden in, I wanted to kind of reiterate why we're here for those of you who might be new to the series. My name is Lola Bakary. I am a CMO advisor and inclusive marketing strategist. And with my company, Bico, I'm really passionate about inspiring marketers to be even more successful and having conversations about the tools, leadership skills, and sort of actionable advice that I can share and have conversations with marketers along these lines to help them get to that next level. And when I talk about being an inclusive marketing strategist, the two pillars we're really focusing on this year are Maximize the Movement, and that's my program for creating marketing that helps the world sort of take a stand in a way that counts for your business, and also Ascend. And that's a space that I've created for women marketing leaders to really have those fluff-free conversations that we all need to have to get to that next level in a safe space. So in the spirit of Women Ascending, of course, the audience welcomes everyone, but this series will really highlight topics along those lines as we talk with our guests. So now that you have a sense of why we're here, without further ado, I will bring in our guest star, Miss Alden Schell.
Hello.
Alden, how are you?
Hi. Happy Monday morning.
Happy Monday. Good to see you this morning. I'm loving the background. We've got some jewelry going on.
No, it's my bazaar. It's like when you're working from home, you get all the insights into all the wares.
I love it. I mean, if there are prices up there, I might buy a couple things.
Later. We'll do it later.
We'll get to that. So, Alden, thank you so much for joining us again. We're so excited to have you. Would love just to start with a brief intro, kind of who you are, what you do, and throw in a wild card there just to fire up the conversation. What's the one thing, maybe not that's keeping you up at night this week, but in your work that you're really thinking about, that you're pondering?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me just start by saying thank you for having me, and thank you for making this space available. I'm thrilled to be able to talk with you and to capture the conversation today. And based on the conversation we had last week, it's just great to connect in that way, and also to just have a forum to have an honest and authentic conversation. So thank you for the space, and thank you for the time, and thank you for choosing me.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. So my name, as Lola suggested, is Alden Schell, and I'm based here in Brooklyn, New York right now. I work in a New York City company, but it's the pandemic, so life has been crazy. And I've been in multiple different states in the last 6 months. So what I do, I work for AMC Networks, and I'm on the marketing side, managing our portfolio and marketing strategy, which means basically after our distribution deals are done, and AMC Networks distributes 5 linear networks as well as a handful of SVODs, which are things like now, let me not go deep down into the acronyms, but video services that are available kind of a la carte. So stuff that you can buy via your Roku or your Apple TV or however else you're kind of connected to cable or disconnected from cable. So I manage the partner marketing opportunities connected to all of those different consumer-facing brands, but really focused on the business strategy, connecting with other partners and understanding what they're trying to do. So it's that's my day-to-day world. Lots of cool TV shows and lots of cool partners trying to get us to watch more TV, which is
so you are the conduit,
which is challenging in this day and age because what else are we gonna do? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would be remiss not to admit that I am currently in a series-wide restream for, we won't mention the number of times that I've watched it, but of Mad Men.
Oh,
we started season 7 this weekend again.
That's great. Well, when you talk about people that or shows that are kind of pivotal. AMC produced Mad Men originally, and now it's available. All 7 seasons are available exclusively on AMC Plus, which is one of our new products.
Which I now have. It worked.
That's great. That's great, Lola. It's like I paid you to do this, but I didn't. You just love Mad Men. Who's your character? Who's the person that you identify the most?
You're not even going to believe this. I don't know if you heard, but right before I brought you on, we heard a little squealing. Yeah. And I got a cat in February. His name is Draper.
Drape.
He's a big, aggressive, but yet soulful and playful boy, and kind of really matches the character of Don. I also have his sister, who I've named Peggy. Mm-hmm, and so the two of them, as corny as it is, are my quintessential Mad Men characters. But it's really the interplay of their relationship.
Yeah.
On the show that I find fascinating.
It's so rich and so strikes a note. I think every time you watch it or witness moments of it, it hits you differently. Certainly it hit me differently this year when I'm watching it versus what was in my career, 5 years ago, kind of watching it and being like, what was happening in the 50s? Like, oh my God. Like, I don't know.
Dude, I'm so glad we got here, because I'm gonna use this.
Yeah.
Unplanned wild card moment.
Yeah.
And I've been noticing on the show that, of course, has always been a theme, but I'm seeing at deeper levels, is how the women on the show are sort of throughout the 7 seasons asserting their sense of professional self. And that's everyone from the women in the office, Sterling, Cooper, Draper, Price, whatever it's called in each season. But also, the surrounding women, the spouses of the men in the office. Yeah. And I think one of the things that might kind of lead us into our conversation with you, I've observed Peggy and Joan specifically constantly sort of being the one who has the innovative idea in a moment and then never getting the credit for it.
Yeah.
And sort of struggling with whether or not to fight for the credit. Yeah. Is the work in of itself happening the way that you wanted it to enough? Yeah. And I think what we're learning more and more is that no, if you want to get to these senior levels of leadership as you have, you've got to figure out ways to make sure you're known for what you do. And we see them struggle with that in the show. How is that challenge of sort of wanting to be a leader who lifts other people up, but also needing to get credit for yourself impacted you in your career?
Oh man, isn't that such a great question, and such a visceral feeling, seeing that, and you seeing something in a room where they had a one-off conversation, and then someone that feeling of someone else taking that idea and being celebrated for it, and what that must feel like. And even if even if your boss, because I'm sure this has happened to you, this has happened to me in my career, and I've witnessed it in my career. Even if you're the person who's kind of taking your idea comes back and in a closed doors, it's like, that was such a great idea.
And John is the master of that.
Take the next steps of doing that, and then
exactly. You're like, when the door's closed, I really appreciate you.
I'm leading this project. Well, thank you so much. But also if I'm going to lead the project, I'd love the credit. And I just crave that. I mean, in every part of my life, right? I want people to tell me I've done a good job. That feels so good to me, because I've generally worked really hard at it. Or even if it was just a lightning bolt idea, it just feels so nice to be recognized. And that's as we talk about love languages, and we talk about relationships in work and interpersonally, that kind of hey, you're doing great.
Okay, so your words of affirmation.
You're valuable. You belong. These ideas are so important to us. It's my sense of belonging and my sense of being is so connected to the work that I do and how I identify with that and how I show up. So when something that I feel is my idea or came from something of mine core and then gets
myself here.
It turns into, something that isn't necessarily mine. I love it when I start the idea and then it turns into something else. That's great. I was a thought starter. It was a brainstorm. Yeah. I finally got there. But when it was when things have been misrepresented, there's this injustice that it feels so, that visceral feeling, like when you're seeing somebody being like, oh man, I really feel sorry for Joan, or like Betty is so smart, just get her up and like get out of the way, Dawn, like get Betty up there.
You know that I love that we're here. The one scene that I hadn't noticed that had that visceral like before. And I'm not even sure if it was intentional. You know, you kind of read things into these shows that maybe, but they're still there. So for this one, I forget what season it was, but it was a season where Dawn wrote the sort of letter decrying the it's not called the nicotine business. Why am I blanking on the word? Anyway,
the tobacco business.
The tobacco business. Thank you. The official word. So Dawn wrote that letter. It was published. They lost all their tobacco business anyway, but it was a stunt. And earlier in that episode, he really gave Peggy a tongue lashing for her stunt with the hams.
Yeah.
Got that idea from her.
Yeah.
After flogging her for it and never admitted the connection. I've seen this show probably 6 times, you know, in the last 10 years and never noticed it myself.
Yeah.
So that's another one. Sometimes the like, you know, hijacking or, well, in the Ascend private group on LinkedIn, we have another word for this that is derived from mansplaining. I won't use it here. Okay, fine. I already just said it. You know, the man jacking, or the person jacking, whatever it is of your idea, can be so subtle that you almost don't notice.
Right.
It.
I mean, like you have to watch it back 7 times to be like, that felt weird, but I'm not quite sure what happened. And let me like dig into that to identify actually what happened.
Yeah. So like you can think back to a time where that happened to you. And for the purposes of our audience really leaving here with some new skills, like what are a couple things that you think people in general, not even just women, can do when they feel that happening and they want to kind of reclaim their voice?
Yeah, man. You know, I really struggle. I still struggle with this. I'll probably struggle with this my entire career, is figuring out how to make my voice heard and the value of that in the room. And I really enjoy like a one-on-one conversation where I can be like, hey, I was thinking about this. Like, does this work? Or giving myself time to like kind of form an idea to 60, 70%, get it to a place where I feel like it's defendable. And depending on who my audience is, if it's my boss who's like, be quick, be bright, be gone, you know, then I have to like, kind of like ladder up what I'm going to say. Or my supervisors in years past who have been, all right, let's workshop this, or give me the analytics or whatever it is. Just like for me, feeling comfortable, even like bringing my own ideas, even in a closed door, has been a struggle, and figuring out my value there, and how I show up in that way, let alone like a larger room, when we were used to be in physical conference rooms, and like, okay, I'm sitting at the same table as the CEO. That's incredible. I've worked really hard in my career to get to this position, but what is it that like I am saying or have worth to say that's worth this table? So I think about it. I'm like, oh, things don't just like come out of my mouth. I'm like,
I know everyone watching can relate to this. That like, is it worth me saying it?
Yeah, and like, I just like, even thinking about it, like my shoulders kind of get tense. Like I know I see the reaction in my body, because I don't want to be seen as like, oh, who does? That was like off point, or, you know, this is a waste of time. I also like hated those people in school, this is visceral, who took up the teacher's time and our time with questions that they could have read or like could have answered on their own. And I just never wanted to be that person, never wanted to be that person. So I always am like thinking about this formative experience in like a boardroom. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Why are we psychologically still?
No, it's so funny because I remember I was at a South by Southwest panel like years ago. It was Andy Cohen, and I'm obsessed with Andy Cohen.
Yeah.
And he was speaking about his book, but like there were some of us there who, of course, had read the book and had like next level click down questions.
Yeah.
You could tell the questions from people who hadn't read the book.
Right.
I just really wanted to make sure the good questions had time to get out. And I remember like kind of shouting out in the crowd, like, Google that, next question.
Yeah, totally. Like, why are you gonna waste like everyone's time? And when you think about the value of the room, this is a tip for me. When I think about like hundreds of thousands of dollars of people's time, the equipment, the facilities, like, is what I'm gonna say worth it? And then you hear other people say things and you're like, maybe, yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing I want people to, and you too, because I mean, I love your vulnerability and coming into the space and admitting to, you know, this audience that it's still something you're working through. I think we all need that reality check to know that someone who's achieved an amazing title like you have and an amazing brand still works on this stuff.
Yeah.
I would just say, look at the alternative, right? Like when you aren't sharing your voice, this brand with all of those things you mentioned has invested in you as a leader. Exactly. So like, isn't it how you serve to share your voice, whether or not you think it's going to be the winning comment, right?
Totally.
It's about, you know, I had a conversation last week with a mentor of mine, Kyle, who's the CMO at OnePlus, and we're talking about this stuff, like showing up with your voice in social. Yeah. And he said something that keeps sticking with me. He was like, look, it's reps and sets. Like, it doesn't really matter what any individual one moment is worth. It's about the fact that your job is to show up.
Totally. And to keep showing up and to like feel vulnerable and like try it. Right. So like in terms of like tips for things that work, it's like, for me, the practice has been, okay, I had this idea and just personally, I'll like think about it for a second. But I challenge myself in that time to make sure that I've said it before the end of and try to say it as close to, you know, when it's most relevant. But I challenge myself with that. And then when I get off the call, I write it down as a celebration. And I have this notebook of celebrations. I have like an email file that I call celebration. And
I love that.
I think, and I have gone back to both the, you know, the folder that's like someone's saying, I was really proud of this thing. Thanks for all that you do. Or this was a really big win for the company, whatever it is. Like I savor those. Those are like food for my soul, for my work soul. And similarly, when I do big things that seem small, but like changing how I operate, to show up in a way that like is then reinforced by like nothing went wrong and actually that idea took off or whatever it is.
I'm going to ask you something. Has it ever been a disaster when you forced yourself to say that thing?
Exactly. No, it hasn't.
It never has, right?
At the worst, it's like we pivot and move on to something else. It's never like Alden.
Like, I can't believe she said that. Explosion. Yeah, but it's like the whole reps and sets idea. Like you do it. You have these really pivotal moments as a result of showing up. Yeah. And you're known for showing up.
And then like that idea like percolates in a different way. Like if it doesn't fit there, maybe it fits somewhere else, or you adjust it, or you take that. What my favorite things to do when I've had really invested either mentors or champions in that room is to have that conversation afterwards and say, hey, I really liked this idea. I thought it was like going to fly. How could I have shaped that differently? How could I have positioned it differently for success? Or like what? Tell me, show me the cracks. Why was that wrong?
This is a critical behavior. I'm so glad you hit on that. There's so much meat here. We're gonna have to like transcribe this and reshare the notes with everyone. Alden, this is amazing. I think far too few leaders really recognize the importance of that practice of informal and frequent feedback, asking for it. And it's not like, how did I do? It's like, it's not a yes or no question, right? It's like, how could that have been? Or how did you think? Or what, like it allows them to really tell you their true thoughts. I've done that a ton as well. And I'm often surprised that sometimes the answer you get is, oh, I didn't even hear that comment.
Yeah. Or like, I didn't even, it was fine. Yeah. Like it just like I felt like, oh man, I thought that I led this meeting, did that go well? I'm not sure. And they're like, yeah, it was great. You did great. You know, like just like in passing, like it didn't even hit their radar. But yeah,
how much more nourished are you for the rest of that day? And I think that's also a critical takeaway for everyone. I love how you brought up love languages.
Yeah.
It sounds like your words of affirmation.
Yes, words of affirmation and gifts. Which are simply, you know, one and the same.
Deep and yes.
Yes.
I love that. I can relate to that. I honestly think, I'm one of those, like all of them, but I do think definitely words of affirmation. And, you know, I don't know, we'd have to have a whole nother discussion to decide on like what the next one is for me.
Yeah. But like, in your week, in your day, if you're
it depends, right? I'm a Gemini, so many different people.
I'm a Gemini Cancer cusp.
Have you? Wait, when's your birthday?
21st of June.
I'm the 18th.
Okay.
Okay. Well, this all makes sense now.
Like what's happening here. We're like 3 people. Because
we could just start like another 4 quadrants on here and just like all different aspects.
And here's my other personality. Yeah, totally.
I love this. Oh my gosh. So but going back to that idea, so I think what you're sharing with us is the importance of getting the things you need to nourish your professional soul. I mean, it relates back to life, but like at work, don't be afraid. If you need that feedback, ask for it. If you like to hear how things went, that's okay. There's nothing shameful about wanting that. And I think a lot of times it's been drilled into us, especially as women, that like wanting credit and wanting affirmation is some sort of a shameful thing to want.
Yeah. And I think when you set that dynamic up with your supervisor, even if, I mean, a lot of my success in my career has been managing up, and for various reasons in my childhood and growing up, that's like something I'm really good at doing. Enabling my direct supervisor to have all of my information in a thoughtful way to help them make their careers grow and help them represent well what our department is doing or what my group is doing or whatever it is. And that kind of managing up for folks sometimes who have less management experience than I do, or have less, different kind of company experience than I do, or international, whatever it is, being able to help give them tools to help me. And that for me, because I am so needing of this kind of affirmation, and it helps me kind of go about the world and manage and take care of, my family and my work, just having my coffers filled in that way. I've gotten really good at it. And that looks like anything from like creating my own performance review schedule with my supervisor, which you can imagine me as a supervisor. I am like obsessed with feedback. And I think like setting someone up for success before a meeting where they're going to take on a leadership role, or I want them to shine in a special way, or I know the people that are going to be in that room and setting them up for success, but preparing them because, we're probably maybe a little bit different in this way. Like, I like to be prepared if I'm going to be put on the spot, like being put on like this, even this conversation. I was like, okay, let me think about a couple things I'd love for people to take away with. Like preparedness just again, fuels me. At the end of my day, I'm making a list for what tomorrow looks like, because I can go into the day and be like, I got this. And even if like a bomb drops in something, like I know the things that need to get done. And I have like, especially in the pandemic world, I have like some control over what's happening on my schedule, or what I know is going to happen on my schedule. And then I totally digressed. But
no, this is great. I'm so glad you're diving into this, because that what I'm hearing is that you actually think of preparedness more, not necessarily more, but also along the lines of like, how do I set up a meeting or a series of meetings or moments that are to come for success, not just knowing that they're there and like getting the right people to show up. But as a leader, it sounds like you really do a lot of work to prepare your higher ups, and the team that reports to you for those moments. Because those are the moments that create success in any business. Like that's what it can mean.
And the people that aren't like me that can just show up and bring that brilliant idea, especially if they know kind of what's happening in that room, what may be happening outside of that room. And so we are not going to talk about this in this room. This will not be a valuable contribution. Let's find a time to talk about that, or whatever it is. Just even what we can talk about and what we can't talk about are really helpful guidelines when you're just starting to show up in new spaces. Like if I'm bringing on new team members, onboarding new team members into my particular world, or as they're growing in their careers or taking on different projects and thinking about what it is that I want to help set them up for success-wise. And I think about that with my own supervisors, as I suggested. Like there's a tool that we used at Bizarre Voice, which is my last company I was at, called High Performance Coaching. Is a kind of a framework for instead of an annual review, like here's what you've done the last 12 months. And you're like, what? I mean, especially these 12 months, it's like, blank, blank. What was I doing? Oh, I was giving birth to a baby. Like, all of these things. Yay, baby. But like the 12 months, like in 12 months from now, no. Looking at performance on a monthly basis and what success looks like on a monthly basis. It's the same practices coming out of that meeting and saying, hey, what the specific thing that I said, what was that felt weird, or I'm not sure how that was received. Like, what's your read on that? Or what would you have done? Would you have done anything differently in presenting that information? That kind of, when you can look at a month of performance, what's the high performance review is your high, and it's like bullet points, 2 things, your opportunities for improvement, 2 things, and then what does success look like next month?
Wow.
And that's just like, landing that client account, or an incredible quarterly business review with Comcast leading to 2 new opportunities or 2 new revenue streams, or whatever that looks like.
I love this. So highs, lows, and then what success looks like.
And the lows
happens every single month.
The low is positioned as opportunities. So what's super cool about this, and this is what we could spend a lot of time talking about this. What's super cool about this is the format. So very easy. It's not meant to like pour your heart out, or like, it's meant for you to reflect on that month, the calendar month that you're looking at. Take those bullets and submit them to your supervisor. Me, I get those bullets, and I'm invested in this person, obviously, and I'm looking at it.
Sorry, I'm super tactical, but like, when in the next month are those due?
This is holidays are weird, just in terms of it, but we usually do them on the 15th. So it's kind of like you're looking at that last month. Yeah. But I'm looking at the last calendar month. I have my team submit these, what they think these bullet points are, to me, in terms of giving me enough time to kind of reflect before our one-on-one. So one of the 4 one-on-ones, like I have a weekly one-on-one with my direct reports. One of those is focused on performance and review and conversations about month back and month ahead. And then sometimes they're focused on longer term career goals. But one of those monthly pieces is really focused and exclusively focused on high performance coaching.
I love this. I mean, if we did a poll, I don't know how to do that yet. This is an idea for next time. Yeah. I'm like, Allison, we need to have polls on here. But I bet you if we polled the audience and asked how many managers or directors or SVPs or whatever who are managing large teams actually have a structured touch point within every month solely to talk about reflective and proactive sort of thinking and feedback, I would have to guess the number is going to be pretty low. And I think that's something I want the audience to take away from this too. Like, really making space for that is so important. Even though sometimes it might feel like you always want to talk about the fire drill of the day, like, this is how we really grow, right?
Totally. And making space for that, protecting the space for that, even if there is a fire drill, fine, we can do it tomorrow, whatever that is, but let's have that conversation. And here's where the most valuable is. So say I'm your direct report and I'm like, okay, here's what I think looked good. Here's where I think I need some opportunities for that meeting that I led. I wish I would have prepared a little bit more for it because this thing kind of felt weird to me, whatever. My own evaluation of myself, plus what good looks like next month. You're reading through that and you're like, Alden, yes, absolutely. That high, when you did, write that email to the CEO or represent our company so well in that other opportunity, like, yes, thank you, kudos. I really liked this, this, and this. So you have the opportunity to reflect on that and say, you know what else would be added to this, 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 and this. This is what I saw you do really well last month. This is what I really am impressed with. And I may have gotten that feedback in the moment, or I may have given that feedback in the moment, which feels also really good. But when I'm celebrating and looking at a career, looking at 12 months, when I'm looking at 12 months,
we got you in the frame.
I have 12 high points about what this person did and contributed to. And then my perspective on each of those 12. I have 12 opportunities for improvement, which may end up being a high point in the next month.
Love that.
Point in 2 months from now, right? Like you had this, and I can evaluate, or you could evaluate if I were submitting to you, Alden, actually, I loved you in that meeting. It was right on. What I did see an opportunity was what we talked about the next day when you summarized it in this way or didn't summarize it in this way. And there was some missing kind of structure about this. So you can have like real dialogue, that coaching piece that I feel like is the most valuable, because what I think and perceive versus what is actually happening may be very different things, right? So having someone who's in a leadership position and invested in you, kind of helping direct that with specific feedback, and not on an annual basis, on a monthly basis, or even sooner, or quicker than that. And then the next one is what success looks like next month. So that's again aligning, like, I think this is what success looks like for our time together next month, Lola. You could be like, actually, that's a little bit off. This month is all about close. It's all about getting this deal done. So I need you to focus exclusively on that, or reprioritize where you're spending the time. So
in this open dialogue, you've avoided so much potential angst of not clarifying that. I love it.
And this isn't like...
I'm sorry, Alden, real quick, just want to recognize we have a couple commenters. Jonathan says, hey, and Nicole says she loves this concept, highs, lows, and bullets.
Good. Well, I didn't come up with it. It's under this brand of high performance coaching, and it is like an orientation, a module in performance management, or an idea in performance management concept, in performance management, that like kind of helps construct this more fluid and thoughtful like view of what improvement and change and consistent conversation about you and how you show up and who you are in the workplace and how people perceive all of those things. It is a great structure for that. The one thing that I've been challenged in my new role at AMC is that there hasn't been this structure.
I was going to say, it sounds like you brought this.
Yeah. So I did bring it to this girl. Yeah, which is great. And like everyone in HR is like, oh, this is amazing. Like this is feedback isn't scary. It can be scary when you don't give it, right? And
it's scary when it's not real, when it's vague.
Right. And we're not at the radical candor part. Like we are not, this is not Amazon in that way. We're not like full up, straight up giving up.
You got to match the culture, right?
This is an orientation that I really enjoy. What has been challenging is getting my direct reports, my direct supervisors invested in it. Because if they're not getting that from their supervisor, then it's really hard to understand the ongoing value in it. So
how have you dealt with that?
If your leadership team is invested in this, which they were at Bazaar Voice, and so they were giving feedback to their direct reports, and their direct reports feedback to us. That was the kind of give and take that really made this work. Whereas this is helping me with my direct reports, but getting that feedback, I've had to be really hands-on with supervisors at my current role and getting that feedback. But they're definitely open to it. It's just like, when you're not used to that particular thing, and when and feedback can be scary. I think
it's time for new, cultural practices to take root. And it sounds like you're seeing that as they continue to see the value of this thing. Like, it sounds like you've heard from HR that, oh, wow, this is something we might want to explore.
Yeah.
Just adding value all across the board, it sounds like.
Well, yes, I'd like to think I am adding value across the board, but the value that like really means something to me is not like the title I'm going to retire with. Like, what is that going to matter when I'm 60? You know, like it's the actual day-to-day time that I spend in normal times away from my family, away from my home, away from things that like really give me joy just because they exist. And it's adding some sort of structure and value and relationship, like sinewy tissue that make
that juiciness.
Yeah.
Making it feel like it's, I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you and what I even know from you as a friend is that you're the type of person who leaves a space, you know, at another level than it was before she got there. And that's really important. Like, even as like how do you look at your legacy? Like you were talking about, you know, when you're 60 something, reflecting back on your career, those are real. Those things are real. You also touched on something though, that I think I want to take into, I can't even believe we only have 9 more minutes. Oh my gosh. Our next part of this discussion, but you knew we were going to talk about this year and how the ways we work have changed and how a lot of that impacts this collaboration and just in general, how people are functioning. So this is super open-ended, but Alden, how have you been dealing essentially? What, you know, whatever's on your heart to share along those lines.
Man, this is, no year like this year. I graduated from high school in the year 2000. And I remember like looking at 2020 on a calendar. I don't know why. I was like looking at years. I'm like obsessed with my birthday. So I think I was looking at like when my birthday would be in 2020, because that's awesome. Far away. Whatever. Anyway, who would have thought that my birthday would be in the middle of a pandemic? I would be married with 2 children, living in my wife's house with my in-laws in Connecticut, rural Connecticut. Like, what is actually happening? This year has been.
Thank you for joining, Aston. Sorry, someone else said they loved it. They got to run, but this was good stuff. You have so many fans out here.
I think these are all your fans, but I'm excited. I'm excited that they've joined us. But like, man, this has just been like, this has been such a crazy year. Taking maternity leave, coming back from maternity leave. And
when did you get back?
I got back in June. So
wow. So right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle of so much, not only the pandemic, but what was going on from a cultural, from a diversity perspective. My company deciding how it was going to show up with this really important conversation about equity and who was, as you can imagine, the entertainment business. How do we're in the business of making money. I love the part of where we're in the business of telling stories and getting stories out to humans. And I'm functionally really intimately involved in that because of the distribution work that I do with partners. But like at the end of the day, it is about stories that resonate or don't resonate, or like
when stories resonate, they're valuable and worth money. Like it's one cycle. Right?
Absolutely. And knowing that there are so many different kinds of stories that we could be helping to understand, helping to give a platform to, and then thinking about just in our own company, all of the stories internally, right? As how have you been able to show up? How have you been restricted from showing up? How have like I partaken in that, or how have I contributed to that, whether I knew it or not? Like all of these things, it was very heavy coming back into work, knowing that I was having this kind of collective aha about who I am, and I'm raising these 2 white boys, and like, how am I going to show up as a mom for them, as a person in my family, and then like coming into work as now a working mom who's working from home and breastfeeding and trying to figure out this thing and trying to connect with people on Zoom or whatever, but like feeling so like, how do I encapsulate all of the things that you're going through that I'm feeling like I'm going through? And I want to like sit down and have a coffee with you. I want to be in person with you. I want to just be able to walk by your office and be like, hey man, let's just go for a walk. Whatever it is to feel connected to humans in this time. And I am not getting that here, right? Like, so getting that feedback, having some structure for getting feedback is really helping me in the pandemic. Because I can structure time with my boss to kind of go through this stuff. And I'm on one of the Hollywood squares on my computer is our president or is the head of distribution. So I am sitting at the table in more close proximity than I've ever been.
Tell me, we don't know anything about what you just said. Hollywood squares on your screen. Tell us more.
Oh, well, like when you are in a Zoom call, and I call them the Hollywood squares, but there's 17, 18 people on your call, and they're like in grids across your.
Oh, right. Got it. Aspen says you're more understanding than most people, and that's half the battle. And I totally agree.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have so much to learn. I guess one of my collective kind of ahas was the more that I'm learning, the less I understand, the less I know. It's kind of like, for me, that experience is kind of like my therapy that I've been in as I learn more about myself or my family of origin, or as I learn more about how I show up in my own relationships, the less I know about what that is, and I have to dig in a lot. And
I mean, it's what Brene Brown calls, which has been like saying it. It's been in my head the entire time you've been talking, because it's what you're doing right now, rumbling with vulnerability, right? Like really, just you don't know where it's going to go, but you're in the ring.
Yeah,
and I love that about your perspective. It's so powerful. Well, Alden, I'm called to ask you a question, just to click down into this topic of support. How do you support a team member in this time who's struggling?
It's like I'm struggling,
right?
It's the kind of what are you feeling? Because people are feeling every version of that. There are some people that are showing up on screens with me who we don't have any of this kind of conversation. We don't have any personal conversation. We're just talking about business or whatever it is. And that for me just feels so void about what's happening. Or man, it's really tough. So what I am doing, which I haven't done before, is daily stand-ups. I had this in product life. Whereas we literally would stand and you kind of go through a scrum, what was happening that day or what we were trying to get through. Entertainment business is a bit different, or at least my business is a bit different. So in the pandemic, I've been connecting with my team face to face as our first meeting in the morning. That has been helpful to uncover the human of or that those opportunities to oh, how was your weekend? A little bit more what's going on with you, so that I can maybe see oh, your dog's sick. Maybe we should talk about that. Or you're back home with your parents because your grandmother. You start to get just the pieces that can help inform a little bit about maybe what's going on personally. Yeah. But then again, that structure that I set up of here is a container of our one-on-one where you can bring something that maybe you don't feel comfortable bringing any other part of the month. I'd like to think that my office is open to be able to have that conversation, but we don't physically, they don't know now if I'm a meeting or not a meeting. So I like that container of space when we can talk, and when it was reserved to talk about what's going on either personally and professionally. I'm really frustrated with this thing. Even basic stuff I need a second monitor would be so of course it would be nice. Let's get you that. I'm sorry I didn't
make your one-on-ones a space where people feel comfortable coming with all of those things, whatever they are. I love that. And the stand-up practice is super, super interesting. I think I've heard a couple of people mention it. I think it's definitely one that makes sense to adopt. And has your team responded well to that?
Yeah, I think that at first, when I first came back from maternity leave, I was just trying to get oriented in what was happening. But then that quickly, understanding like, here's what we're going to talk about, and showing up and being able to see. I have someone on the West Coast too. So like their the beginning of their morning is like blink, blink quite early. But it really helps orient for the day. And the feedback that I've gotten from them in our one-on-ones and just heard anecdotally from kind of their peers is that that's been really positive.
Okay, good.
That's good. It's been a helpful thing. To suggest
this conversation has been so action-packed with tips. Sorry, what was that last thing you said?
Oh, I said to suggest to your supervisor, you know, if you're like struggling, because again, like you can create a stand up with your peers, but like if your boss isn't doing it or leading it, or you don't have that investment, that's going to be a hard thing to kind of keep up and for anyone to value. So maybe suggesting it in a one-on-one with your boss, being like, hey, I heard this, like, I know it's the pandemic, like we're having it would feel really fantastic to be able to kind of connect, even if it's just 10 minutes with our team, talk about what the day looks like and just see kind of who they are, how they are as humans, to see them and spend some time with them, orienting and aligning on what the day looks like or what the week looks like, and understanding what your day looks like and what your week looks like would be really
You've just given us the sample script. I love it. I was going to ask, like, how do you sell that? But I hope everyone's taking notes on the way Alden just lined that up. It was, here's how that would nourish me. Mm-hmm. And by the way, here's what it would do for you.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I can see a supervisor saying like, yeah, it'd be really great not to get as many like pings throughout the day of like, what meetings do you have? Or what was that conversation? Or like those informational updates that drain so much time.
Yeah.
Well, if we have a stand up, boom, you're sharing the information with everyone at once versus having to, you know, answer the questions as they come up. So like, that's a key. And I think you've mentioned this in different ways throughout the conversation, really making sure when you're convincing an audience of a thing, you think about what they care about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that has to be, it can't be like at the core, because hopefully you were at the core, but it's got to be secondary in that positioning, right? Just like, even when you're asking for coffee, asking for someone's time, like it is the pandemic. Everyone is being asked too much. No one is not being asked too much, right? Like it is impossible to do all the things that we're being asked. But when you make it really clear what it is that you want, like I'm going to feel really good giving that to you because I know what it is that you want. There's no ambiguity around it. It's going to be efficient. I know how to do that. I know I can give you something and I'm going to feel good. Right.
So it's funny. That was kind of why we did that pre-chat with you. Right. And I didn't even realize how much you value preparation, but I'm taking notes too. It's like, all right, when we're doing these interviews, we got to have that pre-chat. Get people, you know, comfortable with what we're going to discuss. There's so much that we could talk about. I have like a couple more questions, but I think I need to narrow it down to one and then maybe open up the chat for, I know you have a hard stop at 10:30 actually. Is that right?
Yeah, I do.
10:32. We got to have you go. Okay. 60 seconds though. Tell them my apologies.
Time management. I'm like, oh God.
I know why I'm not my number one thing either. But Lola cost you another 60 seconds. The last question I'll leave you with is, what have you seen this year in the industry that's really inspired you? Open-ended question.
I mean, I think, God, that's here, like 80 different things popped through my head. And it was like the timeline of crazy. But for me, like Morning Brew, it's like one of my favorite.
Love.
Like Phoebe, like please. I get so like excited when I read most of the marketing morning brews. I like save them for happiness in my day. But like I didn't even know that existed at the pandemic. I didn't know that existed. But like just being able to like that, you know, the skim, but like way better and feels way different. So what's old is new again. But like all of the information,
Sorry, we have my sister in the background wanting to get in the combo. Okay.
I mean, that's not like the most impressive thing that's happened.
No,
like valuable. I've like I'm bookmarking, one tabbing, like all of these things that I want to look into that have been just inspiring work-wise. And then obviously a lot of the pivot and change and conversation that like I never would have thought that our CEO would be talking about, even using the words correctly around equity and inclusivity. Not that he... right? But the
effort. It's all about
very specific words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're very specific meaning. And he is really committed to those words.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that from him. And I never would have thought we would have been having that conversation. And maybe that's on me for not, whatever. But
no, I think we were all in the same boat. And
I'm so impressed with
that he might also agree.
Yeah.
You've been pushed into a shift.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks are answering the call, and it is inspiring to see. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this is amazing. Okay, so Alden, thank you so much.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're going to let you go to your next meeting 5 minutes late.
I know.
There's
no short way to get through this. I don't even know if some of my people, hopefully none of my people are on here. They're like,
a lot of your people were liking and commenting the post yesterday. So I'm sure some of them see, and they're going to be very proud at how you represented AMC Networks, all the work that you're doing and your team. Everyone out there better check that job board if you're looking. Who wouldn't want it?
Yeah. This industry's gone through a lot of change, and I'm definitely have this be a place for, if you're interested in chatting about that, or chatting about anything that we've talked about here, I'm open to having that conversation. It may take me a moment to get back to you, because like we said, everyone's busy, but I'm absolutely here for like keeping people going, and giving the stuff that we can share.
Well, and that's what this space is all about. So, Alden, we're going to let you go. I'm going to wrap up a little bit with the group on some of the things that you mentioned and takeaways. But thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Take care. You guys have a wonderful week. And this year is almost over. Hallelujah.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Thank you so much, Alden.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Wow, you guys. That was fantastic. I'm just almost a little blown away by all the insights that we got today. I wanted to hit on a few just to make sure some great recommendations pop out at all of you. So at the end, Alden recommended reading Marketing Brew, which is a publication I love. I actually was quoted in it earlier this year in an article Phoebe did that was advice for Black marketers emerging sort of younger in their careers and how to sort of figure out how to get their feet in the water and get into jobs during this pandemic. So not to like plug the one piece that I, had a quote in Marketing Brew is the reason why you should read it. But it was funny that she mentioned that we hadn't discussed it. I totally agree. If you're not subscribed, definitely check it out. The woman who writes for Marketing Brew, Phoebe Bain, is also in Ascend on LinkedIn. So if you do want to join Ascend and you aren't currently a part of the group, please do hit me up. We'll send you a link to join. Alden's in the group as well, of course. And it's a space for women, non-binary people who are not men, essentially, to come together and really have these deep discussions about career and what it takes to ascend. Of course, we welcome men as part of our community, and watching this live, I know we have a bunch, and that's great. But the private group on LinkedIn is really a safe space for that audience. So I really feel strongly that there are some discussions that, are better had maybe not in the public square. And that's what we do there. So if you're interested, please do join us. There were a few other things. Alden talked a lot about the power of actively supporting your team, right? And if you're going into this week, and if you're a manager of people, if you're a manager of a 4-person team, or even 2, or 100-person team, I think that's what we want to really focus on as the takeaway. What can you be doing to make sure that these folks feel supported, and what practices, whether it's the monthly review that we discussed with highs, opportunities, and what can be successful next month, whether it's something like that, or whether it's just as simple as, like Alden said, doing a daily stand-up, or a stand-up a few times a week with your team, or just having some one-on-one discussions to see what they need. I really encourage everyone to spend some time thinking about that. The world has thrown us a number of challenges that we could never have anticipated. And so there's never been a more important time for us all to focus on supporting each other however we can. And I will be here in this space to hopefully do a little bit of that for you on Monday mornings. Thank you so much for being with us. Again, my name is Lola. I'm a CMO advisor and inclusive marketing strategist at Bico. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an amazing week. Take care. Bye.